Welcome to the Lemons and Pineapples podcast, the personal development podcast for folks who want more fulfillment, connection, purpose, and joy in life. I'm your host, Emma O'Brien, a no-nonsense coach, a seasoned entrepreneur, photographer, rescue dog mum, and happy life enthusiast. Each week on the podcast, I share tools, tips, and strategies, amazing guest interviews, and uplifting conversations that will help you improve all areas of your life. Let's dive in. Hi, folks. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 3 of the Lemons and Pineapples podcast. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you 7 reframes to help you manage uncertainty. This is being recorded on the 7th of November. So, of course, we are a day or so after the US elections and the Orange Man is back in charge. And I think it's elicited an awful lot of uncertainty for folks in the US and uncertainty for folks globally. It's sparking a lot of conversations. There's a lot of stuff on social media. I'm seeing some very divisive posts happening. I'm seeing a lot of things that are a little bit unsettling for me, that I'm seeing from people who I'm friends with and I'm quickly unfriending. And I think this state of uncertainty, as there is a big change happening and nobody really knows what's going to unfold, is Trump going to come through is not the word, but is he going to follow through on some of the quite controversial promises he's made? Or is it all lies just to secure votes? Because let's face it, you can't ever trust a politician to tell you the truth. I don't want to get into the politics of this. What I want to do is share some reframes with you to help you manage uncertainty that you might be experiencing at the moment around this, or if there's uncertainty you're experiencing in your life. I think this has been a very challenging year for many people, challenging for people with small businesses. I've spoken to a lot of people who have found 2024 really difficult. I found myself saying to someone the other day, do you know what? We all thought 2020 was hard. In fact, it was a walk in the park compared to this. So let's talk about how to manage that feeling of uncertainty, because it can be, like I've said, it can be overwhelming. It can be very distracting. It can take up a lot of mental headspace. And when we're stuck in a negative state, it's difficult to move forwards. It's difficult to take action on goals. And the more of a negative state you're stuck in, the more you tend to stay there. So uncertainty feels very overwhelming. We are creatures that crave predictability and we crave control. I especially crave control. I will put my hands up and say I'm a complete control freak. I struggle when I don't know what's going to happen. And unfortunately, the nature of this existence is we don't really ever know what's going to happen. So the one way you can start to counter the uncertainty and being overwhelmed by uncertainty is to start to backtrack and really work one day at a time. The thing with being overwhelmed by uncertainty is we tend to jump 25 steps ahead. And if you're a catastrophizer, you will totally relate. And we tend to go to the absolute worst case scenario that we can imagine and sit there and think, what the hell am I going to do? And you tend to loop with that. It might be a controversial thing to say here, but I don't think there is too much of an issue of sitting and very logically asking yourself, in this scenario, what is the worst thing that can possibly happen? And if it did, what would I do? And to perhaps write your thoughts down on paper, sometimes just getting it out of your head and down on paper and being able to look at it and go, wow, I really have taken a huge leap from the current reality to my imagined catastrophic reality, and that is a really big stretch, and I can back that up a little bit. It might be that the thought of the worst possible thing that can happen gives you a sense of control, because you can say, okay, if that were to happen, here is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to have some mitigating things in place to help me plan and control for that. I'm going to give the example. I'm British. I live in South Africa. The political stability here is interesting. There is always the fear that South Africa will go the same way as Zimbabwe. There's always that fear. And I can do nothing about that. So I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it or worrying about it. It's pointless because I would be worrying about it all the time. However, I always make sure there are funds available that should we have to pack up and leave tomorrow, we can get the dogs, we can pack the stuff up, we can all get on a plane and we can leave. So I have that plan in place for the literal worst case scenario. It's a, plan Z. It will hopefully never ever happen. But if it does, I can deal with it. So that's what I mean by plan. I'm not suggesting you sit in the catastrophe, but sometimes just knowing that if the worst were to happen, you have things in place to cope with it takes that overwhelming uncertainty away. And of course, it's going one day at a time. So if today you're okay, that's good. Just try and keep yourself in the present moment as far as possible and not be jumping 25 steps ahead into the absolute catastrophe and sitting there and going, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What if this? Because the unfortunate thing as well with this is you can catastrophize all you want, but you won't be able to come up with all of the possible worst case scenarios. So if you need to go through the process of processing the feelings of uncertainty in that way, do it, but don't stay there. Uncertainty fuels anxiety, and anxiety tends to fuel worry. And again, worry plays into what I've just talked about with catastrophizing. But the thing with worry is it will just keep you sitting in that worried thought pattern. And when we're in worry or anxiety or stress, that's where we stay. It's very difficult to actually take action and do anything. It's very difficult to break that pattern. So the thing to do here is start to practice a bit of self-awareness and notice when you find yourself worrying. So a great thing to do is to be monitoring your thought patterns and to notice and to say to yourself, I notice I'm sitting in a pattern of worry. The next step with this is to ask yourself, what would be a better pattern of thinking to put myself into here? What would be a better state for me to be in? What would allow me to be more productive? What would allow me to move out of this sort of trapped state? What is a better way of being? So interrupt the worry and then ask yourself, what would be a better way of being? How would I prefer to feel? And see if you can move yourself into that state. There's a powerful heart math technique called freeze frame, which teaches you to do this by essentially asking yourself that question and then very consciously shifting yourself into a better way of being. Positive emotions allow you to reconnect to your intuition. They allow you to get your parasympathetic nervous system into a state of calm. And when you are not in a fight or flight or freeze state, you are able to think more clearly. And when you have access to more clear thinking, you're able to choose another way of being. And I think when we are in the clearer, logical state of being, sometimes you can go, I'm worrying about something over which A, I have no control, B, will probably never happen, and C, the worrying isn't moving me anywhere, so let me do something else. Reframing uncertainty as an opportunity. We tend to, as human creatures, be very frightened of change. Change elicits a lot of uncertainty because we don't know what's going to happen, and we like to be able to predict and control. Just because there is uncertainty and there is change, it doesn't mean it's all bad. It doesn't mean it's going to be bad. So if you can get into the reframe of, yes, it's uncertain, but something good might come out of this. And rather than asking the question, what's the worst thing that can possibly happen here? Reframe that into what's the best thing that could possibly happen here? And see what comes up for you if you're able to shift yourself out of the worst case scenario worry state and into what possible good could come from this change. So whether we apply that to Trump being in charge or whatever state of uncertainty you happen to be in your life, with this change, what is the best thing that could happen here? The fourth thing I want to share with you is to get yourself into the present moment when you are feeling very uncertain and you're feeling a bit trapped by those feelings of uncertainty. They will, I liken these negative feelings, especially things like worry and anxiety, and uncertainty is also another one of them. It's like you get onto the uncertainty train, and if you allow the doors to close behind you and you're on it as it leaves the station and picks up speed, it's very difficult to get off. So if you can choose not to get onto the uncertainty train in the first place, you can avoid being sucked into those destructive patterns of thinking. So in order to stay grounded and get into the present moment, you can practice some deep breathing. So the simple act of slowing your breathing down will calm your mind. So there's a technique in HeartMath called heart focus breathing. If you go through to my Instagram page and have a little scroll down, you'll find I've done a demo of that on there. And essentially that asks you to slow your breathing down. Imagine you're breathing in and out of your heart space, and to put your focus there and to put your focus on your breath. Slowing your breathing down calms your nervous system. When you calm your nervous system, you have access to a better way of thinking. And when you have access to a better way of thinking, you can make better decisions, like to not go down the path of a complete uncertainty thought loop. And I also shared on Instagram this week a compassion practice. It's also known as a metta meditation. If you go and have a look there, I walk you through it. But essentially, it's also a way of bringing you into the present moment and generating compassion for yourself in the moment of feeling uncertain, and being able to accompany yourself when you are feeling very out of sorts and you've got a lot of emotions coming up. And also to be able to generate compassion for other people in a situation where uncertainty is involved. Easier said than done, but when we can remember that everybody is trying their best to fulfill their needs, whether they're doing that in a way that we agree with or not, that is what everybody is walking through the world doing. And when we can extend some compassion, even to people who we may not think deserve it, it softens our hearts a little, and it feels better. And when we feel better, we're able to show up better and do better. And I think in light of things that have been going on, what we need is more compassion for each other. Everybody's very angry at the moment, and all that does is fuels more anger. So you can check that out on my Instagram page as well. Can you build a tolerance and a resilience for uncertainty? A great question to ask if you are really stuck and struggling in a space of feeling very uncertain and you've got those anxious worry thoughts looping, is to stop and ask yourself, am I okay right now? In this moment, is everything okay? And that just brings you into the present moment again, and it will give you a little reality check. The chances are everything is okay for you right now. And then you can get yourself back into that more short-term, moment by moment, day by day living, and just allowing things to unfold rather than trying to, worry about something that's 3 months ahead of time, over which you have no control anyway. The other thing is also to remind yourself of your own resilience to uncertainty, is to have a think back on all of the occasions where you have experienced uncertainty in your life and you have come through it. So I think for everybody listening, there will have been some sort of big uncertainty happening in life. The one that comes to mind for me is getting divorced. It was horrible. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't think I would get through it. It felt awful. I didn't know what was coming, but you know what? I survived it. And there will be things for you that you have also been through, big life changes that you've been through, and you have been okay. And if you can just remind yourself that you've been through big stuff before, you've been okay, you can navigate big stuff again and you will be okay. We forget actually how resilient we are. So take a moment to reflect back on what you have come through and what you have been through and what you have lived through, and that you're okay right now. Can you find some small certainties in your everyday? So that might be, what are you kind of sure of, as much, as again, as much as we can ever be sure of anything, but small certainties. So things like, I like to wake up in the morning and listen to the birds, and I can hear the birds, and I know the birds are up, we're all good, the day is starting. Can you connect with somebody with whom talking feels good each day? Can you take some action each day which moves you forwards? I think I touched on it earlier on talking, is we like control and we like predictability. And it's one of the reasons why it's so hard to move out of a comfort zone, because we don't know what's going to happen. So even though you might be stuck in a situation that's actually really revolting, the prospect of moving out of it is difficult because we don't know what the unknown is going to look like. So we tend to stick with revolting because we know it. But if you can start to think about where you'd like to be instead, or how you'd like to feel instead, or how you'd like your world to be instead, and what small action can you take each day to move you towards that, to give yourself some certainty. You know that if I take this small step today, it's going to move me closer to where I want to be. So the certainty you can give yourself is the certainty that you can take action. The only thing you have control over, anything any of us has control over, is ourselves and what we do and how we feel. So think about that each day. What can I do today to move me to where I want to go? What can I do today that will help me feel the way I want to feel? And just tiny things, just make them small. But if you keep yourself in action, it keeps you moving. And the last thing is to use uncertainty to clarify your values and your goals. Often when we feel very triggered by big changes and when uncertainty comes up, it's an indicator that something is happening that's not okay for us. And I think that links us into our sense of purpose, which is what I talked about in the previous episode of how to reconnect with your purpose. So what would be the antidote to you for your sense of uncertainty? So it might be that what's happening with, if we come back to Trump, I don't want to get too political about it, but if we come back to, he has made some threats towards women's reproductive rights, for instance. If that bothers you, who can you connect with to build community around that to support other women? I suspect what's going to come out of this is pockets of very powerful communities who are going to be really rising up with this. I think there's going to be some very powerful things coming out of this uncertainty. That's my thoughts on it. Who can you find who share the same values as you that you can connect up with, and maybe you can collectively do some good to instigate some positive change? So what values have been violated of yours by what's happened with this? Or, if we come to any situation that feels uncertain for you, what do you want instead, and how can you go about making that happen? I know it's hard to sit when you don't know what's going to happen. And I think the last thing I will add in here is sometimes a sense of uncertainty can lead us to appreciating what we have, appreciating the people we have in our lives, and leads us to reaching out and connecting more with the people who matter to us, and connecting in with your support network and allowing people to help you and being there to help other people as well as we're going through navigating something. You know what? We navigated a global pandemic, and we can navigate this global change as well. So it will be okay. I think it's just, it feels very frightening at the moment because we don't know what's going to happen. But like I've said, there are lots of things you can do to soothe your own feelings with the uncertainty and to connect up with other people and get support. On that note, I would like to gift 5 coaching sessions to a handful of folks. So it's five single sessions I'm giving away to folks who need some support right now. So if this is you, if you're going through something and you feel very stuck, if you are really struggling with not knowing where to go, how to set a goal, where to go from here, how to move, and you would like some coaching support, I will invite you to apply for one of these complimentary sessions. The link is in the show notes. There is a form for you to fill out to apply, and I will come back to you and let you know if you have got one of those sessions, and we can work together just to get you out of a rut and get you moving again into the right direction for you. So if you need that support, please apply, and I will look forward to connecting with you. As always, thank you for being here with me today. I will see you same time next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed it, please leave me a 5-star rating and a review, and make sure you share this episode with a friend who you know will also enjoy it. I'd love to connect with you on Instagram. Please drop me a DM and say hi at Emma O'Brien Coach. And for more information about coaching with me, please head to my website, which is emmaobrien.coach.com.